Hi again, we are back with the second lesson. Today we're going to be talking about skills and why they're important to utilize within your AI tool. And I think fundamentally skills are such an important thing for the future of the way we work, the way we think, and the way problems get solved. So just to quickly recap, we had LLMs, and LLMs were connected to UI, user interface, and we talked about how different models could be utilized across your process differently in order to save tokens but also get the optimal outcome. And today we're going to talk about skills. Skills are a set of documents that are recorded in your laptop or in your Claude or whatever AI tool you're using, and they store information about you. So just to quickly kind of give you an idea of how that works, if we say, we have an LLM, and within this LLM, we get an input and we get an output, right? This is usually very, very generic because if I type in, create a PowerPoint for me, that PowerPoint is still, a basic PowerPoint that is very similar to everyone else's PowerPoints. LLMs usually produce generic outputs. If you just give it a prompt, hey, make me a PowerPoint that does this, it'll give you a PowerPoint that looks like every other PowerPoint that Claude has made. If you say, create a Word doc, create a PDF, etc., they will all be very similar because, it's just a basic input that gives you an output. Now, if you make your prompt quite advanced, you can actually get better outputs, but that requires a lot of thinking every time you need to retype everything. It's not really practical on a day-to-day basis. So then what happens is with Claude and Claude Code, we've got these things called skills, and skills are essentially a set of pre-written instructions. So let's think about it. The way you think, the way you write, the way you create documents, they all have a unique voice to them, and they all have a unique procedure to them. Unique procedure will be recorded by your skills, and they will be able to then provide your LLM more context around the output that you're expecting from it. For example, I have a skill that is my voice, and every time I need to get an email out or write a LinkedIn post, that skill is getting used so that my LLM sounds more like me rather than just a generic AI written email. Same goes with a lot of different things. I have skills for developing different software and how the process that I follow. I have the skills for my finances. Finances are managed through that, and every time I want to purchase something, I want to make a change, those skills come into play and help me make that decision. They can store information about you. I have a skill that kind of logs my productivity, so on a day-to-day basis, I'm like, hey, this is what I did today, and essentially throughout time, that is useful because let's say I go and ask Claude something about 3 weeks ago. I usually could use Claude Code at the moment, and Claude Code would then go and open that specific skill and find my log from 3 weeks ago. So quite helpful in a lot of ways. And skills are in this format. So this is what I got Claude Code to generate. And essentially, we've got 3 sections in skill. We've got the front matter, which is what your Claude will read all the time. So this is like, when you give your LLM an input, let's say go make a PowerPoint, your LLM then goes through a list of its skills and their descriptions to see which one makes PowerPoints and it's relevant to that action. And then it will go and read that skill file fully to understand how to make a PowerPoint for you. So the front matter is what your LLM reads all the time to find to use. It's great and it provides concise information so you save tokens, but your LLM can still decide if it needs to read further or not. Now, one thing to note about this is that if you have a lot of skills and if you download a lot of skills from the web, then you will kind of clog this system. So every time you send a message to your Claude Code, it will read all the skills and their descriptions. So it just reads all the names and the descriptions. If you have a lot of skills, that means that every time you send a message, you're consuming more tokens because all the list goes back and forth through the LLM. Now, we've got the trigger hint. So it's like when to use that skill. Again, kind of supporting for that initial part about, hey, I want to do this. And then your Claude knows that if, the user said, make a PowerPoint, go and open that skill. And the last one is the body of the skill. So the body of the skill gives you, the information contained within that skill. Usually a set of instructions, but it should not be limited to that. You can, store data here. This is essentially, I think, the way for humans to be able to interact with AI going forward. We need a simple way to communicate to AI, and AI needs a simple way to understand the information. And I think, unless Neuralink comes out, for the time being, regardless of how much AI improves, us as humans, we need to communicate with it, and skills seem to be the best way to go with that. And it's a very structured thinking, and the market is now popping off because of it. A lot of people are just like creating skills and sharing them, and getting more and more, I guess, diversity in terms of the output that you can get from your LLM. Another thing to note is that a lot of people are saying, a lot of experts are saying that skills are essentially going to be the software of the future, right? Because up until this point, creating software was hard. Now it's going to get easier and easier to create software. So skills are going to be that thing that is kind of your business's IP, right? So let's say you work in plumbing, you work in asset management, you work in any other industry. Your knowledge of that industry and how you operate in that industry is the skill that you need to store. And I think organizations in the upcoming years will be starting to store the skill files in order to kind of keep that company value and retain it through the improvements of AI. What happens then is that as AI improves, your business improves next to it because you retain all the knowledge and you're able to, in an efficient way, input the knowledge into those AI systems. Now, with those skills, we've got definitions as well. So front matter, it sets the skill name in the description, becomes the / command as well, so you can actually call and skill. So let me give you a quick example, so you can see how you can just quickly bring skills up and make it work. I have a skill for counting the number of times my software MDView has been downloaded, right? So I can just type in / MDView count, and I'll just put it on auto mode so it can accept things. But essentially, it will go call my railway and get the information from railway so that I can have a count of the number of times my software was downloaded. Okay, so we can see 20 downloads have been claimed so far, and it provides us information about the latest download. So now to go back to the rest of it, trigger hint, a comment telling Claude Code when to suggest a skill, even without being explicitly called. So body is the plain markdown, headings, list, conditions, anything that goes. And essentially most of the time it's step-by-step instructions of Claude. Now I have made a software called MDView, and the main reason for that is to be able to view skill files. One thing actually I forgot to mention is that skill files have the ending .md, which stands for markdown, and markdown files have been used for a long time now, but at the moment they're being adopted by the AI world because of the number of tokens they can save. And essentially in the markdown you have more information about the tasks that you're doing. You can actually get it to create a checklist. So if you get your Claude Code to create a checklist in MDView, you're able to see those tasks, and as Claude completes the checklist, the task will get marked as done. Or if you need to co-work with Claude and you need to do some of the tasks, Claude needs to do some of the other tasks, you can mark things off together as you go along. You can also download this as a PDF, and you have the different sections of the skill. I think at this point we can pause here to go to the next video. So as I mentioned, skills are quite important. I think there is going to be a huge job market around skills and a science itself around it. But as of now, this provides enough understanding to then go to the next session, which is, I guess, how to organize and manage your skills. This will give us the foundation to get started with AI, and then we'll jump in Claude Code to do some more practical tasks together and achieve that 10x productivity that comes from Claude Code.